Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jen Schlueter. I'm Dean of Graduate Studies here at the Columbus College of Art and Design, a nonprofit art and design college that has been a creative force within Central Ohio for more than 140 years. Welcome to today's event. Thank you so much for joining us. We are here because now is a pivotal time in retail, and we believe that there are none better set than the creative and resourceful minds at CCAD to examine and solve the many challenges in this evolving field. As part of that work, we've launched a 9-part online lecture series, CCAD Knows Retail, featuring industry leaders who will share their insight about the retail landscape and what is on its horizon. Before we jump into today's talk and I introduce our speaker, I want to share a few housekeeping notes. We are recording today's talk so that we can share it on our website for those who weren't able to join us or who want to take a look again at a later date. Today's event is in a webinar format, and so all lines are muted and videos are off other than for the speakers. I will also tell you that the lecture that you will see in a moment has been pre-recorded for us today. We're so grateful to Tom Ramsey for making some time in his really busy schedule to make this happen. So I will monitor the Q&A function throughout the presentation, and we will be getting all of your questions to Mr. Ramsey for his response by email. So please go ahead and drop those into the Q&A as things unfold. And at the conclusion of his lecture, I'll stick around on the line to take any questions that you might have about CCAD's newly launched MPS in retail design. You're also welcome to use the chat function throughout to share any reactions or comments. All right, now I'm excited to introduce today's virtual speaker. Tom Ramsey is Chief Marketing Officer at Bath & Body Works. After graduating from CCAD, he started his design career at Marshall Field and Company in Chicago. He moved on to Leo Burnett, USA, followed by Victoria's Secret here in Columbus. Tom is constantly inspired by the opportunities to bring a great brand and consumer experience to life via storytelling through creative marketing and retail environments, connecting with customers on an emotional level, and taking customers to an aspirational time and place. So let's take a listen. I'm going to go ahead and share this video over for us here, and then we'll chat afterwards.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for signing up to hear my webinar today and your interest in the CCAD MPS in retail design program. Should be really interesting. And you know, I thought it was a great program that these guys put together for having everybody understand what retail really is and what is needed. And there were so many opportunities and so many things to talk about around branding or impact to business, all those things. But when I really thought about what was important and what I wanted to get across was the idea of knowing your customer and what that really means and why it's important. It's something that a lot of people don't understand and don't do very well, but it can be the key to great success in a lot of different ways. So with that, just a little bit of who I am. I am a CCAD graduate from a really long time ago. I graduated with a retail advertising background and ad graph background, and have been in marketing and advertising ever since. And I've loved every minute of it. And I'm currently the Chief Marketing Officer at Bath & Body Works, which is a big Columbus-based retailer, part of L Brands. All right, I think you can go to the next page. So, thank you. I always like to think about, okay, if I've got a term, what does it really mean? If I looked it up in the dictionary, what does it really mean? And customer is one of the things I don't think I really ever looked up. So there were two things that popped up in the Merriam-Webster dictionary. The first one was, it's someone that purchases a commodity or a service. Basically, just you're the person that's making a purchase. And the second one is, it could be a, you're this type of, like you're a tough customer or a picky customer. And those are really basic kind of terms. But then if you look up the business definition of a customer, it's a person that receives, consumes, or buys a product and can choose between different goods and suppliers, which I think is a really important point, because we are all consumers. We all have millions of choices, or at least hundreds of choices on any given thing that we are looking for. And our job is to make the company we work for the best choice for the customer. So it's an obvious choice. The other part of that is basically what I just said. The main goal of any retailer or commercial enterprise is to attract customers or clients and to keep them coming back with return visits. So really, at the core of all marketing strategies, it's about understanding the customer and the needs of the customers and what they value. So you've heard, if you haven't heard any of the other webinars in this series, you should go back and look at them. But I've heard a few times about strategic intent or a customer need state, those types of things. A strategic intent a lot of times is based on a customer insight or a customer need. So just things to think about. Next page. And I apologize, we're doing this in a random way that wasn't expected. So, and it's being recorded, so I have no chance to take live questions, but we'll figure that out in the end. What I did want to do is just give you a little sense of my background. So after leaving CCAD, I moved to Chicago and worked for Marshall Field's, who many of you probably have never heard of, but it was one of the big iconic department stores of the Midwest and in the country from way back when, 1800s. And it was started by Marshall Field's. Selfridges from London came out of it, which is known as the best department store in the world. So I learned a lot there about just a customer experience and what customers want and need, and really based in a community. Chicago has very specific needs. Then I moved on to Leo Burnett, which is another iconic advertising agency in Chicago. And that taught me a lot about customer segmentation and just getting customer insights on why somebody finds one thing appealing versus another. We did a lot of copy testing and things like that, just to get a sense of what would be successful and what resonates with customers. Then I went on to Victoria's Secret. Most people will know what that brand is. I was there in the late 90s to early 2000s. And it was a great experience, great brand, and very much about an experience and customer centric. And then I moved to Bath and Body Works, which probably is the epitome of retailing at a customer centric way. And it kind of combines all of the things that I've learned in the past. It's about an experience, it's about branding, it's about relevance with product and just messaging. So I think I've been really fortunate to work, and it wasn't planned, but to work in a lot of companies that are very customer focused, and that's taught me a lot. And another reason I wanted to make sure that you guys all heard what I think is really important about getting into retail and one of the fundamentals. So if we can move on. So this I thought was an interesting quote, and we all go to school, we all get jobs to get paid and to have a career and to have a life. And I thought this quote from Henry Ford was really interesting. It's not the employer that pays the wages, the employer handles the money, and it's the customer that actually pays your wages. So even way back when with Model Ts, Henry Ford knew the customer was really important, and he needed to make sure that his cars were the most relevant to the customers. He didn't say that in this quote, but that's what he really meant. So then we can advance. So this is just kind of how I think about it and my experience in retail for a really long time. So nothing is more important than your customers. And if you think about any brand, any retailer, any consumable product is nothing without its customer. So every product, every experience you create, every interaction you have needs to be meaningful to the customer. And if it is, you'll get a return visit. But if it isn't, they won't come back, and you won't get a chance to build a relationship with them. And that's what's really important is, a customer is one thing. But when you have customers that keep coming back, after a few times, they become more like your friends, or they get to know you like family in a way. And I mean that in a general way, but some store associates will know customers and they'll know their families and they'll know their kids and that they just had a grandbaby. And all those things are really important. And just think about the places you go, whether it's a restaurant or a store or, school, frankly. When people know you, you keep going back and you feel better about going there. So we really need to make sure that we understand our customer, we know our customer, so that we, in the top of their mind, are the best choice for them in that moment. It's all about top of mind awareness. It's about relevance to them and relevance in their entire shopping cycle. So shopping cycle can be, I'm going into my kitchen and I'm out of paper towels, to I'm looking at a digital ad and I'm seeing a Bounty ad pop up, or I'm in the store and boy, Bounty has this really cool display at the end aisle and I should pick some up. So there are a lot of different touch points, and you want to make sure that every one of those touch points kind of adds up to you're relevant to them and you understand them. So that's why if you don't know your customer, you can't be relevant and you won't be the first choice for them. So if we can move on. So this, firstly, is a little insight into how I work. I'm very sketchy, and I don't mean that in a sketchy way. I like to just think on paper. And I was doing a presentation at work for some people, that just to give them a clue of what we do in marketing. And if you look at this page, on the right-hand side, you've got the customer, and everything we do is to the customer. But if you look at the left side, we've got all these inputs, and there are many more than this. These are just kind of the top ones at the moment in time I was thinking about this, that all those inputs help us create our strategy and our creative content. But you have to take all of those inputs and then take the needs of a customer, what's important to a customer, and what they care about, and put those two together, and you'll get to a really great marketing strategy, creative content, and you'll be more relevant. But it's kind of an interesting illustration, I think, of when you are in retail, it's different than being in a brand that sells wholesale, because you actually do have an environment that you control, or can influence. You have customers that you know and can know by name, whether it's a database or in person. You have financial goals that you're always looking to achieve, as far as sales of the company and a launch of a product. And what's great about it in retail is you can see your influence immediately. So you can put something out in the marketplace, and within an hour online or a day in a store, if it's working or not. And if it's not working, you can actually change it quickly and get the momentum that you need. And that's not the case in other industries. So that, to me, is what's always been exciting about retail. And along with those kind of short-term marketing ideas, you also have brand initiatives that might say, okay, we need to get more credit for being high quality, or we want to go from a grandma brand to a teen brand. How do you do that? And that's a lot of work that is important branding work. And I feel like in retail, you get to do that more in a year or 2 years than you ever would working for a traditional CPG company, potentially, in your career. They'll launch one thing a year. They're getting faster, but it's a much slower pace. And it's just a really exciting industry to be in, because it's ever evolving, so it keeps you on your toes. Hopefully that explains kind of the inputs and the outputs in a general way. If we can move to the next slide. So I think if you just sum all of that up, our job as retail experts, as creatives or strategists in retail, our job is to create an emotional value related to our brand for the customer. It's creating a connection, it's creating an aha or an ooh or an ah, and something that puts you in their heart versus just in their wallet. And I think this is one thing that if you look in the retail landscape right now, a lot of people are overlooking it, and it's increasingly important, and more people will close if they don't get on board. And I think if you look at a lot of the retailers that have closed over the last few years, just think about who they are and what they looked like when they were leaving the retail landscape. They just weren't relevant, and they didn't know their customers, and they kind of didn't care, which was a shame. So our job is to make our brands relevant and make it a fun place, or a sexy place, or a wholesome place for everybody to go and do business. Hopefully that makes sense. Next slide. Okay, so when we talk about knowing your customer and getting to know your customer, there has been so much conversation over the last several years about big data and how it can help you, and it certainly can. There is so much you can find out about every one of us that are sitting here, what we do, where we go, what we buy together, what we buy apart. And that's all really important information if you're trying to target somebody with marketing. What that big data doesn't do or won't do is tell you why people make the choices they do. And if you're really getting to know your customer, that is ultimately one of the most important things. So to understand why people do things, you need to observe them, go where they're going. You need to ask them questions. And there are a lot of different ways you can do that, which we're going to get to in a second. So big data is one of those things that over the last few years, people have been enamored by, and it's been a huge help in being more targeted in our communication. But without the whys, you don't have the insights to then create great creative or great strategies. But it's very helpful. Scary, but helpful. If you can go to the next slide. So if you think about observing, you have to understand what customer you want first. And what's exciting about that is, in a way, sorry for the shaking, this can feel like being an investigator or a private eye. Because if you think about who do I need to target as a customer for a specific product or a brand, or if I'm working in an existing brand, who is it that I have? Who do I need to keep, and who is new that I need to attract? So there's a lot of puzzle pieces that go into what's the right customer even. Am I a luxury brand? Am I a bargain brand? Am I for men or women, or am I for everybody? And there are just a lot of inputs that you need to go through to find out who is the right customer. And a lot of times it can be determined by what just a white space is, or if you have an idea, how do you find out if it's viable or not? So anyway, once you've figured out what the right customer target is, or the customer base you're looking for, you just have to go where they are and see what they're seeing. We all are online every day. We're all out in the world every day, maybe less in the last year than the past, but we're all going to get back out again. And people gravitate to things in packs, honestly. You'll find similar people in different places, meaning people kind of group together. You don't find a lot of old people where young people hang out, as an example. Me being an old person, I don't hang out in those places very often. But when I do, I always see something new and different, and I take that away with me and think about how I can use that. You need to put yourself in their shoes and just think about, okay, what are they seeing? If you're at a concert venue, what are people wearing? What are they looking at? What are they talking about? What are they drinking? And all of those things, are they hanging out in packs, or are they on their own, couples or families? And all of these things can help you start building things to keep looking for, to then eventually see if there are patterns in behavior. Like, all 25-year-old women are doing this. or 60-year-old men are gravitating to these places. And by the way, did you know, like, this is going to sound dumb, but like bourbon is a big thing these days. Whatever that is, it's like you can find out things just by watching people and seeing what's consistent after you've seen several of these events. So then the next thing is, after you've observed, you should probably just talk to people. So if we go to the next slide, just ask. You know, being at Bath and Body Works, we ask customers a lot for their feedback and what they like about things, what they don't like. And honestly, they are very honest and open and just want to be heard, because people don't really ask them what they think about products they're putting out. They do, but not as directly as just saying, do you like this thing? Why would you use it? Why wouldn't you use it? So the more you can get comfortable talking to people and just, you know, pull somebody aside, say, I saw you doing this. I'm working on this. Do you mind talking to me? I've got a $20 gift card for you to Starbucks or whatever. And you'll find a lot of people will do that. There are also a lot of companies that do that specific thing. They do intercepts of people shopping and just ask questions. It's good to have those recorded so you can actually see it for yourself and hear it for yourself. Or you can do focus groups, which is maybe a more old school way of hearing from customers, and it's more controlled, but you do then get people talking together and sparking ideas or comments off of each other. So that can also be really interesting. And I think what is good to know is that you can't do one of these things and have your answers. You have to look at where are people going and what am I seeing and what patterns do I see? Then you talk to people and figure out, why are they doing these things and what's appealing about that I could maybe take away and do something with. And then if you look at big data or, you know, marketplace sizing information or customer trend information, you can start to put those pieces together, and you can either quickly build a case for why your idea is the right one, or you can actually look at it and say, okay, we were thinking about this, but the reality is there's a huge open opportunity over here that nobody's doing or talking about, but everybody's asking for. So having this kind of interaction with customers is really, really important. And like I said, everything we do revolves around what a customer wants and needs. And if you don't understand the whys behind it, you can just be off track. So if we go to the next slide. So I guess what I would say on this is be curious. It's not easy to go out and do all of that research. It's not easy to go out and talk to people if you're not comfortable with it. And it's not easy actually to listen for things that you're not looking for. But that's probably the most important piece of this. I've worked in this industry for many, many years, and I can't tell you how many people you deal with that will be so focused on their idea that they don't see the forest around them is burning, or that the forest around them is turning green and they're looking for orange trees. You know, it's kind of interesting how focused people get on their idea and not give themselves the ability to look outside of their own field of vision. And that's really what this is about, because if you think you are the customer, 9 times out of 10 you're going to be wrong unless you really fit into that target customer group. But you should never approach it like it's from your perspective, because you can't assume that you know what's going on. You have to ask. And every time I think I know what's going on, I don't. So it's really important not to just do this kind of investigation and staying up on your customer in points in time. It's a continuous activity, because customers change very quickly. If you think about what you were doing a year ago or 2 years ago, it's probably really different, or at least there are pieces of it that are really different than what you're doing today. And for sure, 5 years ago, your world didn't look the same at all. And I'm speaking in general terms, but I know mine didn't. And, I kind of dressed the same and I looked the same, except older. But the reality is what I do every day and what I have to think about every day is dramatically different than it was 5 years ago or even 2 years ago. So you always have to be curious and think about what's next. What am I not seeing? What do I need to see? Because those things can actually impact either now or in the future your brand. So like I said, listen to what people are saying about other people, about other brands, and they might be out of your business focus, but it's still really important because they're all influences in what they do and what they see. So, for years, the wine industry was, doing tastings and these experiences in their, wineries, and it was very exclusive. And then brands started being a little more democratic and higher distribution, and creating campaigns that kind of made you feel like you were getting that experience, but you were really just buying a bottle in the grocery store that didn't have that background. But it educated people on what that was, and now it's even bigger. Bourbon, I mentioned that earlier, would be the same thing. It's like, it's whiskey, but if you go to bourbon country now, they're all doing wine-like experiences, and it's bourbon. I mean, it's kind of all the same thing, but the nuances of it are interesting, and that's what people are curious about. Like, customers just want to know, and they want to search out the thing that is different so that they feel unique, but not too different. So all of those things impact what a customer thinks and does every day. Their ideas around your competitors, I think, is really important. What they see as trends, or what we see as trends, will influence. And like I said before, as you're doing this research, don't just look for the things that you're seeing and you can see. Think about what are the things you're not seeing, and that might actually uncover a huge customer need that nobody's addressing. So the last bullet on here is kind of where I started. Every retailer, every brand, every restaurant, everybody is fighting for the same customers. There are only a set amount of people in this country or in this world. And if you think about the amount of places for people to spend their money, it's mind-boggling. And we're all trying to get the same people to spend the same money with us versus somebody else. And it's challenging, but it actually can be really fun when you unlock it. And being a brand that's relevant is really important, and that tends to be the thing that drives customer loyalty and repeat and all of those things. So super important to know your customer, stay on top of it, and always keep evolving it and look for what's next. Next page, please. So just to wrap it up a little bit, and hopefully you've gotten this from what I have been saying, if you get to know your customer well, you have a much better chance, if not a great chance, of creating products and marketing that are relevant. If you understand what somebody likes and cares about, you can do something that actually makes sense and resonates. If you don't know them at all, you're kind of shooting in the dark. And nobody wants to do that because you're wasting ammunition. And everybody's talents are too great to be wasted. If you know your customer and you build that relevance and build those repeat interactions, you're going to start to build a relationship with them. And so many times in retail, people look at the transactions or the dollars per transaction that you're getting or the dollars per footstep that come in the door on any given week or day, the number of trips a customer makes. But unless you have the foundation of knowing your customer and being relevant, they're just transactions. And a transaction is a moment in time. A relationship lasts hopefully forever. If not forever, at least it lasts longer than the 20 seconds it takes to make a transaction. So if you're relevant as a brand, and so I will just say this, it's easy to be irrelevant as well. All the people I was talking about earlier that closed their doors over the last couple of years, COVID was maybe a good excuse and sped the process for some, but the root cause really was they weren't relevant and they didn't know their customers. And yes, economic factors played into it, but not as much as I think it's being talked about. So relevance leads to sales growth, and that's what we're all here for. It's why we're all going to get hired. It's why we all do get hired in retail, is to drive sales, to drive traffic, and to sell people things. And if you're relevant, you have more of a chance of people coming in to your brand to purchase. Relevance leads to long-term brand health. So if you have that relationship versus a transaction, you're actually getting people to come back. You're increasing the usage of whatever it is you're selling, and you're becoming a bigger part of their life. And without that, they will just go away. If you don't have that connection, whether it's an experience, an interaction with an associate, or a fun interaction online, you won't have repeat, and you won't have a healthy brand long term. Relevance also leads to customer love. If somebody feels like you get them, they are connected and they will glom onto you like nobody's business. The minute they think you don't get them anymore, they're on to somebody else who does, or who they think knows them better. So you always want to be the one that gets them. You can't get everybody, so you have to be really specific about who your customer is and who you want your customer to be, to then go after them, be relevant, and create that relationship. And then lastly, and maybe more importantly, we're all here to make money. We're all here to have a great career, and relevance, helping build relevance, leads to employment. If you don't do a good job at it, you don't stay around very often, very long. And we all want jobs, and we all want to work. And hopefully we all want to work in this industry, because everybody says retail is changing, and a store environment is kind of on the decline, and digital is taking over. And there is a point to that is, I don't know if I would say true, but things are changing for sure. But if you think about the idea of a retail environment, there have been retail environments forever. And if you think about, I don't know if anybody knows this, if you go to the Roman Forum, the Colosseum, they used to have all of these gladiator battles, whatever. But the reality is, if you see all of those arches all the way around, those were vendor stalls. So it was basically a giant mall with entertainment in Roman times. That has not changed. The experience has changed, and what we're selling has changed. So, and I think what is important to know is that the ones that will survive are the ones that are creating a really interesting experience and are super relevant, and just get the people that they're trying to attract. So I think that actually might have been my last slide, but if we can go to the next one, just to wrap it up, hopefully that helps you guys understand my perspective, and I think a lot of people's perspective on why you need to know your customer. And you can't just know who they are, you need to know who they are. and what they do and why they do it, and really dig in. And it's actually a fun process to talk to people and see things. And at L Brands, we call it patterning, and we do it for product just to see what trends are out there, what changes over time. But you start to see things show up repeatedly in different places. So then it's like, okay, that's a pattern I'm seeing. Or you can see people doing something socially in Paris or Tokyo, and then you start seeing it in Berlin and London. It's like, okay, well, this is the thing now. So how do we approach that, and how do we think about incorporating some idea like that, or at least the essence of what that is giving a customer, into our experience or our brand? I think it's also interesting, and we don't really talk about it as much. What's that experience and the recognition that you know your customer in a digital world? A lot of people will call it personalization and targeted, all of those things, and that is true. But there are different levels of personalization that customers appreciate, and the number one is like, just put my name on it. You know who I am. It's kind of a false sense of friendship if you know somebody's name, but it works. Or I don't know if anybody knows this brand. It's a lawn care brand called Sunday or Sundays. I can't remember. Look it up. And just the way they have set up their digital experience and their website is very much like, I know your property, I know your grass, I know how to help you take care of it. We've got somebody here that can help you, and it's got personality, and it feels, for just those few minutes, like you're actually talking to somebody, even though you're just looking at a screen, but it seems like they get you and they're going to help you. And they actually have great product, and have done very well for my lawn, I will say. So I think that just the idea of knowing your customer, creating great experiences that are relevant to them, is even more important in this world today. And it's more important to figure it out digitally, and have that as a reinforcement to the physical. So a lot of times they're different experiences, and the ideal for a customer is that I'm getting the same experience. So again, you can't have any of that work very well if you don't know your customer like a friend. So that's all I had today. I hope this was helpful. And unfortunately, this is a recorded session, so I'm not going to be able to take questions and give answers, but I'm sure we will figure that out. If anybody does have questions that need answered, we can, I'm sure, plan for that, and I can do as much as I can to get you those answers. So with that, thanks a lot. Good luck in your careers in retail. It's a really fun, ever-changing industry, and I think it's only going to grow because we've now had a couple of years of weeding out of the bad seeds or bad performers. So there's opportunity and openness for new ideas to come to light. So it's a really, really, really fun career choice, I think. So hopefully you make it, and CCAD is a great choice. Did me well, and I've never regretted it. So thank you very much, and I'll see you later. Thank you.
Hi, folks. Well, thank you for joining us. While I want to give you an opportunity to drop a few questions into the Q&A, there's already a few in there, but if there are more, so I can get them to Tom Ramsey, Chief Marketing Officer at Bath & Body Works, I want to say a couple of things to you. First, I think the fact that there's an awful lot going on for L Brands, for Victoria's Secret and Bath & Body Works. I'm sure you've seen the news, if you're interested in retail, about the sort of separation of those companies and all the things that are unfolding right now. Tom, the fact that the chief marketing officer from that organization is part of the advisory board for CCAD's new Master of Professional Studies in Retail Design, and that in the middle of all of it, he made good on his commitment to do this webinar for us, even though there's an awful lot of moving parts in his life, tells you something about how this degree is going to impact, I think, the students within it. So I'm going to put a link here into the chat and just tell you a little bit about it while you are dropping any other questions that you have for him, because he has promised that we'll take those questions to him and he will get back to all of us. So CCAD's Master of Professional Studies in Retail Design is a brand new program that is led by and shaped by experts like Tom, who are deeply invested in mentoring the students within the program and supporting them through what's going to be a 1-year full-time or a 2-year part-time deep dive into how you design a retail experience for customers. Folks like Tom will be mentoring, will be steering capstone projects, and have already shaped what is a really exciting new program for us. So retailers at a crossroads, we're talking about being ready for that in all kinds of new ways. And that the curriculum that we are unfolding within the program is going to lean in hard to supporting designers who already have some skills in this arena, but really want to learn more about the ethical use of behavioral science and data analytics alongside a spectrum of design disciplines and executive level business acumen to change the ground of their own careers. So I invite you to learn more. I am so grateful to Tom for being part of this journey and for being with us today. We're going to get your questions to him. And meanwhile, I want to suggest that if you enjoyed today's talk, you might want to peek in on a few upcoming webinars in this arena. I'm going to put that link in the chat here as well. We're continuing the CCAD Knows Retail webinar series with a couple more coming up before we get all the way into June with Dave Cherry talking about consumer experience and Ed Hoffman talking about compelling storytelling in the physical world. Lastly, if you enjoyed today's lecture and you want to share it with a friend who wasn't able to attend, we'll have a recording available on that MPS and Retail Design website after May 31st. Please stay connected with us and with CCAD by following us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Last call for any questions. And I want to thank you all so much for being with us today for this. Please reach out if you're interested in the MPS in Retail Design program. Have a really good rest of your day, y'all.